Network, and welcome to those who are joining us on Facebook and YouTube at Commodacity. Welcome, everyone. My name is Kama, and as usual, every week we look at some really interesting topics, some really thought provoking topics. And this week, I want us to consider whether we would put our moms, dads in nursing homes, or whether we ourselves would want to be placed in nursing homes. You know, there is this age old question: would you like to live forever? Would you want to live forever? And I think we would believe that the obvious answer most people would give is yes, absolutely, indeed, yes, indeed, yes, indeed, I would want to live forever. But whenever I've asked that question to persons, I'm surprised that the answer is usually no. Yes, whenever I've asked that question, whether it's male, female, whether the person was pretty young or even quite old, and I ask them, would you want to live forever? The question is usually no, surprisingly. And when you pry a little further and you say, well, why? Why wouldn't you want to live forever? The answer is usually, you know, I don't want to live to the point where I can no longer take care of myself and I have become a burden to the people around me, even my loved ones who might, they want the best for me, they want to be there, but it's just really taxing, it's just really inconvenient, it's pressuring for them. And so, yeah, for most persons whom I've asked that question, their answer is no. I just want to live to the point where I'm still conscious, I'm still cognizant, I'm still relatively able to take care of myself. After that, it's not much of a life anyway. That's how most people look at it. It's not much of a life anyway, so I don't want to be a burden. No, back in the wee old days, in most places, the life expectancy was relatively low, compared to what it is today. The average person today is expected to live well into their 70s, 80s, 90s, even beyond the hundreds, right? Because of improvements in healthcare, improvements in hygiene, just generally improvements in how we understand the body, how to feed the body, how to care for the body, how to care for the environment so as to sustain healthy living. All of that have more or less improved. And so the population is living longer. As to the quality of life, though, they might be living longer, but they might also be living. It's almost as if you are preserving them. Um, they're on medication. A lot of our elders, they're on these tons of medication. If you look at their night table, their nightstand, dozens of pills and medicine, and this must be taken by that time and that must be taken by that time. So it's almost as if they're embalmed. They're here, they're looking at you, they're but are they really having a quality of life? The lifespan has been extended, but is it really a quality life when most of your hours are taken up with chugging down medicine and putting in pill after pill after pill and having to take injections, and most of your money goes to the doctor, most of your money goes to the labs, most of your money goes to the pharmacy. What quality of life is that? So that's that there's a question, right? So it's something that we really have to think about. And for most persons, they prefer to leave this planet while they are still able, right? Where they are still conscious, and they don't have anyone wiping their butts. They don't have anyone having to stop their life to attend to them. This whole thing about nursing homes, I guess I've always been conscious of it, and asking myself the question, would I want to be placed in a nursing home? Would I put my mom, well, my dad is no longer here with us, but would I put my mom in a nursing home? The question is something that I always think about, but I think it really came home to me a couple years ago when one of the elders, the real stalwarts in the Black community, Dr. Ben, when he passed couple years ago, Dr. Yosef Ben Yochanan, whom he was my mentor, was one of my mentors. He's somebody who I really looked up to and revered as an elder. And for all the things that Dr. Ben did for the Black community, Dr. Ben had been out there as an Egyptologist, as an engineer, as a historian, doing his own research and unearthing so much of our history in Egypt on his own funds, excavating and bringing this knowledge to us so that we are able to know that Africa was a home of civilization. All the monuments that he helped to unearth and helped to secure the place for us in terms of us being the originators. So Dr. Ben, and he did this for 70 odd, 50 odd years, 60 odd years, right? He was pretty much in the fields from he was roughly 20 years old. And Dr. Ben died in his 80s. Dr. Ben had 12 biological children. He was married 3 times. Two of his wives had passed, and so he remarried. In all, 12 biological children. And he adopted 8 children. So 20 children in all. He raised 12 biological, 8 adopted. And when I saw that in his later years, Dr. Ben ended up in a nursing home in Harlem. Dr. Ben died in a nursing home with persons from the community having to be spokespersons for him, asking for donations, asking for persons in the community to come in with things that he needed just for his basic care. And my question was, where were all these children? Where were the 12 biological children? Where were the 8 adopted children? It just never made sense to me. Because my thing was, a man like Dr. Ben should never end up in a nursing home. Ever. With all that he had done, all the work, all the time, all the abuse that he endured verbal abuse mainly, you know, standing up for us, standing up for his people, being the one of the ones out there with a strong shoulder and blazing the trail and setting the facts straight. Somebody like that should never ever in his elder years have to worry about where are my diapers going to come from, where's my next meal going to come from. It just did not make any sense at all to me. And but that was the reality, you know. So it came home, it really came home to me that hey, you can live a life that is exemplary. You can live a life where you put your race first, you put your people first, you do so much, you give so much. And in your end days, and something similar happened to Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey died alone in London, poverty stricken in London, a man who had done so much, arguably one of the greatest black men who ever walked this earth, right? He died alone and poor and cold and sick, asthmatic, you know, in London. Our heroes end up in their later years like paupers. It's almost as if they were put in the almshouse. When I was growing up and I'd hear people talk about the almshouse, this is what our heroes are given. And it also happens to a lot of us regular folks. Sometimes it's our own making, because sometimes when you see people end up in these homes and you're wondering, where are your folks? Where are the persons, the special people in your life? Where are your children? Where's your spouse? Sometimes it's because they did not attend to their children, they did not attend to their spouses. They lived very selfish lives, and so they end up in a place of loneliness, in a place of um, destitution in their latter years, right? So, yeah, it's something I've thought about in terms of me personally. How old would I want to be? Um, I want to live a long life. I want to live a very long. I think I would want to be on this planet way over 100 years. However, I do agree with most persons that I don't want to be here and be a burden to the people who are around me, the people who are in charge of my care. And for that reason, I try to do everything in my power to ensure that I eat well and I live well. I don't abuse my body. I don't abuse my mind in terms of the things I expose myself to. I ensure that I'm in an environment that is conducive to healthy living. I don't bombard myself with negativity. Negativity is out there, and if you're going to be in the world, you're going to be exposed to it. But there is a limit you can put on it. There is a shield you can put, especially around your sacred space, your home space, even your workspace, depending on how much control you have over that workspace. Luckily for me, I have a lot of control over my workspace as well. And so I try to protect that space. I try to protect my body and my mind and my spirit. because I want to be here. To me, it's a very interesting planet. You guys have a really interesting planet here, and I'd like to stick around and see, how it unfolds. I don't just want to stick around and see how it unfolds. I want to be a main participant in it. I want to be a mover and shaker in it. I want to be able to do all the things that I love, all the things that I'm passionate about, well into my advanced years. I want to still be writing. I want to still be creative. I want to still be gardening and talking and sharing opinions and all of the things that excite me and that I'm passionate about. And I want to be able to care for myself. I want to be able to have a partner, and we complement each other, we care for each other well into advanced years. That is how I would love for it to be. In terms of my mom, like I said, my dad passed years ago. But in terms of my mom, I don't see myself putting my mom in a nursing home. I hope I never have to do that. There are, of course, advantages and there are disadvantages to putting your parents in a nursing home or having yourself put in a nursing home. For some persons, they look forward to this time. And for some persons, this is really a beneficial thing for them. It can be. Of course, as with everything else, there are levels, right? There are levels to the type of care that you get, depending on what kind of nursing home you're able to afford. So it boils down to affordability, as with most things. If you can afford certain nursing homes, is almost as if you're sending mom and dad off to vacation, permanent vacation. If you have that kind of dough to afford the kind of care that's available, right? It's pretty much like an extended vacation. They will be taken care of, all their needs. They will have their personal aides, people there to make sure that they're occupied with hobbies. People there to keep them stimulated. You can pay for all of that, right? The average person might not be able to afford that kind of thing. And so we'd have to settle for the average care. Is that enough for mom and dad? I have seen a lot of videos on, circulating of the type of abuse that the elders have to endure in some of these nursing homes, and it really isn't pretty. So these videos are done in secret. The caregivers obviously not realizing that they're being recorded, and you see them do some of the most atrocious things. But there's a flip side to that as well. Some of the elders also do atrocious things to the staff as well, because the state that they're in, sometimes it's the particular condition that they're suffering from. Sometimes it's just a whole frustration when they get to a certain age, and they have the perspective of that age, and they're looking back. Maybe they have unfulfilled dreams, they have regrets, they have things that they wish they could go back and change, they have things they wish they had never done, they have things they wish they had done. So with old age, oftentimes comes that pent up, that misery, that frustration. They don't have the funds to do the things that they want to do. Even sometimes, the child's birthday, even though the child is now an adult, they don't have the funds to buy the child a gift. They don't have the funds to go do certain personal things that they used to be able to do. And so old age and the realization that your power is gradually drifting from you, that of itself can make you frustrated and miserable, and you snap easily. You snap, especially at the people who are trying to help you because you feel helpless, right? So there's a lot that goes with it. And they can lash out at the staff who are trying to care for them. So there are also videos of these elders doing atrocious things, right? It's not just one way, it's both ways. So when you put your parent or whichever elder in your life, an elderly aunt, an elderly sibling, right? You really don't know what's you just have to hope that you made a good choice in terms of the particular nursing home. You just have to hope that what you're signing up for is actually what your loved one will be getting. It's a chance that you're taking. And because of this, a lot of persons who put their relatives in nursing homes, they end up, it's like they carry this guilt. They carry this guilt with them, because especially when if you remember that person in their younger days when you were a child and they were in their just adults or midlife, right? And you remember how they used to care for you. You remember how vibrant and strong and full of life they were. You remember how commanding they were. They probably held senior positions of leadership. Some of these elders, they held senior positions of leadership in their companies. Some of them were teachers, some of them were doctors. They're accustomed to being in charge. They're accustomed to giving the orders. They're accustomed to leading. And you remember that. So it's like two different persons. But you remember also that they used to care for you, they used to provide for you. And on the one hand, you want to be able to do the same for them in know that they need it. But on the other hand, you have your life, you have your responsibilities, you have a salary which more than likely has a cap on it. So there's just so much that you can do in terms of finances, right? You have your bills, you have your own kids to send to school, you have things to take care of. It can become a burden and it can make people feel resentful. It can make them feel guilty. Another thing that I've noticed in families is that the burden, let's say burden, right? Because as much as we love our elders physically and financially and emotionally, it can become a burden, right? It doesn't have anything to do with the love for them. Just the fact that you physically have to be there. Some of them have ailments that you have to lift them all the time. You have to feed them. You have to change them. It can be physically very taxing, right? I've noticed in a lot of families that the care for the elders, it seems to fall on either the youngest sibling or the sibling with the least education or the least earning power. That's what I've observed in families. I've seen it in my own family, I've seen it in other families. The parent might have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 kids, the primary care of the parent when in their golden years, it tends to fall on one or two of the siblings, and these are the siblings who are most likely are the youngest ones or the ones with the least education. Have you observed that in your family or in other families? I certainly I certainly have observed that, right? I certainly have observed that. So, why is that so? Why is that so? Is it because, well, the ones who have gone ahead and, they have more advanced education, you would think, okay, so they are better able financially, right, to take care of the mom and dad. So why aren't they shouldering the responsibility? Why is it falling back on the ones who are less able financially, right? So it's almost as if there's a hierarchy there on who the main responsibility is going to fall on. And I've heard persons, siblings complaining, why is it all on me? Don't I have a life? Don't I have things to do? It's a legitimate complaint, and it's something that we really have to look at. When there's a situation where siblings are there and the parent is now in their older years and need care, it should be split right across the board. Isn't that so? You should take turns. Maybe stay with this sibling for the month or for the week or for whatever, and take turns. Some kind of logistics have to be put in place, but the burden should not all come down on one individual or two individuals. And then the rest of the siblings, maybe Christmas time or major holidays, they may visit, or they may bring some bring a care package, or they may send money, but they are not physically there. They don't physically have to go through the stress of caring for the parent. It's unfair to the ones who have to do it. They have their life to live too, right? So there is the guilt, this guilt that you might feel when you think that, oh my goodness, my mom carried me for 9 months. She gave birth to me. She looked after me. My dad was there. He helped to raise me. He looked after me. Now they're in their senior years and they need help. They need care. And here I am parceling them off for somebody else to care for, right? A lot of adults go around with that guilt when they make the decision to put their parents in a nursing home. They do have that guilt. But like I said, there are folks who want to go to the nursing home. There are positive aspects to being in a nursing home. If you have your mom and dad at home, let's say you decide not to send them to a nursing home, you are able to afford that care. You get a nurse to come in, or a nursing aide to come in, attend to their needs, and so on. You have to admit, though, that it's going to be a lonely life for them, because more than likely they'll be the only one at home. The nurse is there, give them the medication, feed them, but they don't have that peer bonding. The nurse more than likely will be much, much younger and cannot relate to the senior person. when they are in a nursing home, they are going to be around other seniors, other persons who can remember way back when, who can talk about things that happened 50 years ago. I remember it's a thing that the older you get, it's almost as if the memories from long ago, they seem more vibrant to you. It's almost as freshly exposed. Those brain cells is like they're freshly exposed. And so you will have them talking about things that happened 30, 40, 50 years ago as if it was yesterday. And you, as a younger caregiver, you just cannot relate. You might be there, you might lend a listening ear, you might be even intrigued by these memories and ask questions and so on, but you cannot relate. You can't relate. So, for example, given the Jamaican experience, right? You can't relate to pre independence, growing up in the 40s, 50s, when Britain still ruled Jamaica and the whole atmosphere was different, the whole vibe was different. You can't relate to the the um the sensational 70s. You hear your parents or your grandparents talk about it, you just cannot relate. But being with persons in your similar age group, they can share stories, they can, and it's they reminisce together, and that bond is formed. They have similar hobbies, there are similar things that they enjoy doing that maybe a younger person would not enjoy doing, right? So their pastimes will be different. People always talk about the bingo, in the nursing home. They play bingo, they do certain things and talk about certain things that they have that shared experience, and so they can relate to each other. So that's a positive thing, right? That is a positive thing that they would not necessarily get if they were locked up at home, the kids gone to school, mom and dad gone to work. They're there. The caregiver actually has work to do in caring for them. It's a lonely existence, and it can make them feel, as much as we would think we would think we're doing the opposite, but it can make them feel useless and invalid. So that's another thing we have to take into consideration. Also, the cost of caring for the elderly. As we said, the life expectancy has lengthened. But what that has done, at least from my observation, is given the society some really well preserved seniors. They're living for an additional 10, 20 years, but it's 20 years of medical bills, 20 years of pharmacy, 20 years of lab work, 20 years of procedure after procedure after procedure. And pretty much their pension cannot cover that, right? Their pension is chicken change in terms of one procedure can bankrupt an elderly person. One diagnosis, one major diagnosis, one major procedure can do away with any funds that they had saving up, right? How many times have we seen where the person worked from they were 18 all the way till they were in their 60s, and one diagnosis, and they have to be begging for help, GoFundMe. They have to resort to begging for one major diagnosis, one major procedure that needs to be done. The burden, let's take cancer care, for example. You get a diagnosis, the senior gets a diagnosis of, let's say, colon cancer. And they have to do, they are told that they have to do surgery, they have to do chemo, they have to do. By the time, their little pension and their little funds that they had saved, the millions of dollars that they have to spend, it's gone. And then now you have to think about follow up, you have to think about aftercare. Even if in the beginning, everybody is optimistic and they rally around and they say, okay, I'm going to put this, I'm going to put that, you're going to put this, everybody put together. We're going to get through this. We're going to ride it out. After a while, it really becomes tedious. If you have to be doing this year after year after year for 10, 20 years, after a while, you really start, it's like you're looking at grandma and you're looking at grandpa and you're saying, does she really need to be here? Does he really need to be here? That kind of, you become fiendish. You start thinking nefarious thoughts because it's pressuring. It really is financially pressuring. And whenever money is involved, many things can fly out the window. Friendships, family ties, bonds, morality, a lot of things fly through the window when the pressures of the finances start to squeeze, right? Hi, Auntie Dora, welcome. Auntie Dora says, hell no to nursing home. I would rather give up everything to care for my parents. It's the least I can do to say thanks for all they sacrificed for me. Right. And that's hi Jazzy, welcome. That is, I think that's how most of us would feel. But the thing is, when the reality of the financial burden hits, because you might start off, like I say, when you just go into it, you're optimistic, you're saying, yes, we can do this. Let's put together. And then the first year passes and the second year passes, and people start feeling the real pressure, the burden of the medication, the procedures, the surgery, all of that. And if you say you're going to keep mom and dad at home, are you going to employ someone to take care of them? Are you going to be able to sustain that for the long haul? We're talking about years. We're talking about a lot of money. So Jodian says, one thing I know for sure, I don't want to suffer when I get older, and I don't want any family to care for me. I pray God take me anytime I reach a stage where I can't help myself. And that's what I'm saying. Everybody who have asked, almost everybody who have asked this is what they're saying. And you would think most people would say, well, yes, I want to live forever. I want to live forever, forever. No, people are just being very realistic. And they're saying, I just want to live up to the point where I can take care of myself. Once I become a burden to anybody, I want to tap out. I'm ready to tap out. I even heard, I have a friend, she is 76 years old, right? And she has a spouse. He's in his early 50s. And she was telling me that her spouse was saying, oh, he wants them to be together for the long haul, and he wants her to live until she's really, really old. And she said, she told him, no, I don't want to live to be that old. I want to tap out when I'm still conscious, I'm still able to move around, I'm still able to brush my teeth and wipe my face and wipe my butt. right? And we all love life. Most of us want to be here, but we don't want to be a burden to anybody else. It's a pride thing, right? Especially when you've lived your life as an independent person. You don't want to reach a stage where you become dependent. You don't want to reach that stage, right? Because really and truly, it isn't much of a life after that. It isn't much of a life. The quality of life, you're used to making decisions, and you're reduced now to the point where you can't even decide what you're going to put on. You can't decide what you're going to eat. You have no control over anything in your life. What kind of living is that? Is it just to be wheeled out to the veranda and you're put there for the day and you look out and you see the sunrise and you see the people going by? What kind of living is that? I've been to, in my days as a journalist, we used to rove the country looking for stories. And I remember we visited some of the infirmaries, right? So the infirmary is a place, I guess when I was growing up, we'd call it the alms house. That's how we refer to it. And people would threaten you, you're going to end up in the alms house. I've visited the infirmary where you have these people in their senior years, pretty much nobody to care for them. They have been deserted for whatever reason, whether it's karma for things that they did to others or they neglected to do, and this is their payback, right? Whether it's that, or like I said, sometimes, as in Dr. Ben's case, you do everything that you could humanly do and beyond. You benefit not just your family but the entire community, and you can still end up in these places, right? But let me tell you, the infirmary is a place of destitution. It is such a drab, I mean, it's a negative environment for you to be in. Everybody around you is unwell. Everybody around you is just in this state of, as I said, they're infirm, they're destitute. Um, when I used to visit these places, we used to maybe comb their hair, read a story for them, that kind of thing. And sometimes in the schools, the youngsters who are doing their community service, these are the kinds of things that they do, right? They would go to the infirmary, spend the day, spend a couple of hours, read to the elders, do little things for them. But that's not something that you'd want for the elders who you love, the elders in your life, right? If we're going to say, we're going to make the noble statement that my mom, my dad, I'm going to care for them, they will never end up in a nursing home. Are we really putting these things in place? Or is it just something that we're saying because it's so nice? It sounds like the noble thing to say and the noble thing to do. Do we understand the reality of that, and are we putting things in place to ensure that we can sustain that? Because there is a financial cost which is heavy, right? Because if you have to go out to work in order to sustain that, that means you're going to need to employ someone to come into your home to stay with mom and dad. Even if it's a relative who is going to do it, they're going to be spending their time, their effort is something that you're going to have to pay them. even if it's a relative, I think this person should be paid to do it, right? And we have to also consider that we can't put the pressure on one or two family members. Like I said, I noticed that in families, this pressure is put on the ones who, either the youngest siblings or the ones who are considered not as educated as others, and it's unfair for them to shoulder this responsibility. So if it's something that we're going to do, this all the siblings, all the family members should come together and agree, and we should take turns, and we should realistically assess and see what are we putting in place, because remember, this is going to be for the long haul. It's not like back in the day when 50 was the ripe old age. When somebody, back in the days when somebody was 40, 45, 50, that's ripe old age. Not anymore. People are living into their 80s, 90s, hundreds. So when you make this commitment, when you're making this commitment, it's a serious commitment. You're saying, I'm going to sustain this person for the next 20, 30 years. You know what that means? That means you're going to sustain them until you yourself are a senior citizen. That's what you're really saying. Will you be able to do that? Because let's say right now you're 50, 55. Your mom and dad in their 70s, 80s, or even put it even younger. You're 40, right? Your mom and dad in their 60s, 70s. They're likely to live into their 90s, hundreds. You are saying you're going to be able to sustain them for the next 10, 20, 30 years. You are heading to your own retirement. You yourself are heading to the point where you're going to have to live off a pension. Can you realistically sustain that? Or are you going to get to the point in the road where you have to say, boy, it look like both me and mom going to end up in the nursing home, right? It look like both me and dad going to be in the nursing home. So if it's something we're going to do and we really want to do it, it's something you have to sit down and plan and be practical. If it's something that affects other persons, then they have to be brought in and share in the decision making and share in the commitment and be serious about the commitment. Remember, we are a people who we are the village people, we are the social people. Our history, our heritage as Africans is a social, we're a social oriented people. Our elders had a role to play in the society, in the village, right? Our elders were part of the dissemination of information in terms of the customs and the codes and the mores and the values, the folkways. Our elders were in charge of handing that down and seeing to it that everybody understood their place, everybody understood their function. So the elders had roles. They did not feel useless. Even something as simple as storytelling. Our elders, they would tell these stories, and through the stories, the traditions were passed on. The customs and the beliefs of our people were passed on. And this was a very important role, right? In the modern society, that role has been replaced by gadgets. That role has been replaced by the internet, by, you know, the other things that our youngsters now have access to in their little cubicle. They no longer engage the elders for advice. They no longer engage the elders for support, even for entertainment. And that is why now our elders feel so isolated and so unwanted and useless. So maybe we need to go back to that tradition of having the elders, the oral tradition in their words, in their wisdom. I always tell my students when I give them assignments to do, for example, to go research, I always say to them, don't forget the human resource, right? Don't just feel like everything you have to run to the books, you have to run to the internet to get information. The human resource is your most valuable resource. And the human resource are the people who you have around you who have had experience that you can ask questions. You can tap into that knowledge base. That's what our elders were for. That's the role they had. We need to go back to asking our elders questions, asking them for their guidance. We need to go back and ask them what was life like back then. Make comparisons, right? Let them know that they are still valuable and they have an important role to play in our lives, because you don't want to just have seniors who are there, they're living longer, but they're just existing. We want them to continue to be important members of the family, important members of the society, right? And we need to encourage our elders to eat healthily, so that they are not just there to sustain the big pharma. They're not just there to sustain the medicine, the medical industry, the pharmaceutical industry, the laboratories. A lot of our elders, that's all they do is fork out cash for medicine and procedures. Every week they have to go to the doctor. We have to encourage our elders to eat healthily, to go back to the herbs, the natural foods. Feed them veggies and fruits. Give them their coconut water, blend up their juices and give it to them. Give them their herbal teas so that they can have a quality of life, so that they're living longer and they're also having a quality life. They don't have to be running to the doctor every minute. We want our elders to be healthy and vibrant. That's what we want. Let your elders be healthy and vibrant so they can continue to make contribution, so that they can even be starting businesses in their senior years to support themselves, and they will still maintain that independence, maybe not up to the level that they're used to, but still can earn a living by doing something. So maybe, yes, they retire from the career that they had that sustained them for 20, 30, even 40 years. But that doesn't mean they can't do something else that will sustain them. It don't mean they have to park up and sit down to rely on other people and start feeling like a burden. And that's when the quality of life will go down. You can, as a retiree, you can go back to school. Do you understand that? Yes, you can. You retire from your career, you can start a new career, one that is more conducive, yes, to your advanced age, but will still allow you to be productive and still allow you to be profitable to yourself and to others, right? And For those who operate and work in the nursing homes, I want to encourage you to, one, don't go into that job if you don't love that kind of work. If you don't love the elderly, if you don't love to serve, if you don't love to care, don't go into that job, because you're going to end up taking out frustration on the patients, right? And when persons, remember, for the adults who have to make that decision to put their moms and dads and elderly relatives in the nursing home, it's a tough decision. For most of us, it's not something we want to do. It's something we might end up having to do because of the constraints. So when we place our elders in your care, please just do what you are mandated to do, right? Care for the elderly, don't abuse them. Remember that their faculties are not as sharp as it used to be. Remember that you have a lot of power over them. Don't abuse that power. It's somebody's mom, it's somebody's dad, it's somebody's uncle or granduncle, right? So just take care of the elders, right? They have been put into your care. Their relatives wish that they never had to, but it's just life, and they had to make that tough decision. So don't let them regret having to do that, right? For those who are working in the nursing homes, just do your best and try to take care of the seniors. For me, like I said, I want to live to be ripe old age. I at least 150. I want to be at least 150, and I want to still be vibrant and active and doing the things that I love, um, blazing new trails and being absorbed in my passions, right? Like the rest of us, I too, I don't want to be a burden on anyone. I want to depart this life in my sleep, right? One day or one night, I'm going to finish work, finish doing something that I truly love, and I'm going to go to sleep, and I'm going to wake up on the other side of reality. All right, until next week, we're going to talk about another intriguing topic. This is Kama. Take care of yourselves, take care of the elderly folks in your life, show them respect, and treat them as you would want to be treated. All right, so take care, and I'll see you next week.